Satanism and the History of Wicca Part 4. Starhawk was initiated by Victor Anderson, who once belonged to a coven whose form of witchcraft included a form of literature-based Satanism, or at least a religion closely akin to literature-based Satanism, or so says Kelly, based on research by Valerie Voigt. Whether or not Kelly is correct about Victor Anderson, and whether or not Buckingham had anything to do with Wicca, it shouldn't be considered unlikely that some traditions of Wicca originated as forms of Satanism, and then gradually grew away from Satanism. To this day, there are occultists who start out as Satanists, and eventually become Wiccans or other types of neo-pagans. It would be very odd if such people's understanding of Wicca was not at all influenced by their previous experience with Satanism. Theistic forms of Satanism have a natural tendency to give birth to new non-satanic religions. If you reject Christian theology, as nearly all intelligent Satanists do, but if you nonetheless venerate Satan as a real being or force, not just a symbol as in law-based Satanism, then the question inevitably arises, who and what is Satan? Different forms of Satanism have different answers to this question. One of the easier answers is to reinterpret Satan as a pre-Christian deity, usually either Set or Pan. However, once you equate Satan with a specific ancient deity, you have taken the first step away from Satanism. You are no longer venerating Satan per se, you are now venerating a pagan deity with satanic overtones. And then, once you develop your paganized belief system further, the satanic overtones will eventually seem less and less important. Such has apparently been the case with the Temple of Set, an offshoot of LaVey's Church of Satan. Setians disagree on whether to call themselves Satanists. It seems not at all unlikely that some forms of Wicca, with all its diabolical witchcraft trappings, would have a similar origin. A group of theistic Satanists who equated Satan with Pan, as some Satanists do, would very likely tend to evolve in a Wicca-like direction. More about Wicca's diabolical witchcraft trappings. Wicca's self-image is based on the records of witch hunts, reinterpreting the alleged activities of accused diabolical witches as the worship of a pagan horned god. Wicca thus makes a new use of the same source material that Satanists have been using for centuries. An interesting question is, why reconstruct an old religion this way, rather than just going back to the records of actual old religions? Other forms of neo-paganism, for example Asatru and Neo-Druidism, which do base themselves more on what's known about actual ancient religions, are far less likely than Wicca to be confused with Satanism by outsiders. Why do Wiccans insist on using words like witch and coven, when they could easily use other, more respectable-sounding words, despite Wicca's diabolical witchcraft trappings? Or perhaps partly because of those trappings, Wicca has more popular appeal than any other form of neo-paganism. Certainly Wicca's hot-button terminology has helped Wicca get lots more publicity than it otherwise could. Wiccans people sometimes bemoan the fact that newspapers interview them only at Halloween, but most small religious sects don't get nearly so much free publicity at any time of the year, not even on Halloween. And, judging by the way some Wiccans keep repeating "we're not Satanists," far more often than they actually get accused of being Satanists, it seems logical to suspect that at least some of them are using words and images popularly associated with Satanism as a way to attract attention, and/or because they themselves enjoy feeling naughty. I've actually heard some Wiccans say that, if the word witch ever became too respectable, it would lose some of its power. Modern Satanists have long felt that the basis of Wicca's appeal lies in the paradoxical, some would say hypocritical, combination of Wicca's satanic connotations and the denial of same. Thus, Satanists tend to regard Wicca as a ripoff of Satanism. I personally don't regard Wicca as a ripoff. In my opinion, Wiccans' use of witch and derived trappings is neither more nor less legitimate than the use of those same trappings by Satanists. And Wicca, as a religion, does have much more substance to it than just its deliberately adopted superficial resemblances to diabolical witchcraft. But I'm very irritated by those endless "Wicca has nothing to do with Satanism" disclaimers. I wouldn't mind if Wiccans merely said that Wicca is not Satanism, at least if they said it without repeating it unnecessarily. It's true that Wicca is not Satanism, but it isn't historically true that Wicca has nothing to do with Satanism. Nor is it true that Wicca has nothing in common with Satanism. Some forms of Wicca and neo-paganism have a lot in common with some forms of Satanism.